saw some of you, but there was no go. Yeah, I'm listening. Here, we've got a bunch of folks. All right. I don't know. I didn't see everybody over here. I just saw a few. All right, let's all, you guys start off. There's a lot of us.
All right, hello. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Gwen Dowdy Rogers, the president of the San Bernardino City Unified School District. On behalf of the entire Board of Education, we welcome you today. We want to thank Governor Gavin Newsom, Assembly Majority Leader Eloise Gomez-Reyes, Assembly Member James Ramos, State Superintendent Tony Thurman, our own County Supervisor Joe Baca, County Superintendent Ted Alejandre, and the media for visiting our district to shine a light on all that we are doing to support mental health for our students. Our school year started Monday, and we've had a great week. Families sent 95% of all students back to our campuses for the first time in over a year for in-person instruction. That deserves an applaud. Everything we planned has worked well to protect and welcome our scholars and our staff, along with layered safety protocols like universal mask wearing, hospital-grade air filters, frequent sanitization, temperature screening, medically supervised COVID liaisons at all schools, and available free testing, and keeping our COVID under control in our school. We are starting our year with a heightened focus on establishing healthy relationships and creating warm, welcoming schools environments through social, emotional learning. What the governor and superintendents experienced at Jones Elementary School is happening in all 72 of our schools now and throughout the remainder of the year. We also provide free mental health counseling for our scholars and staff, and know that especially now and after being away from our schools, it will be needed. Our board has made a strong commitment to these supports for years because we know that students learn best when they know we care about them. And we love our scholars, and they are beautiful children and young adults full of promise, who has made us very proud to serve them. Our mental health and social emotional support services have been recognized with prestigious awards, including a Golden Bell. But our greatest rewards today are the 47,000 smiles we see every day. Thank you again for being here. We look forward to sharing more about our schools with you all throughout the day and into the future. At this time, I'm going to introduce and turn it over to our 5th District Supervisor, Joe Baca.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon. Thank you, President Rogers. It's really an honor to be here, but most of all, it's important for these families. It's great to see these families back, the children back, and what it means to many families that have an opportunity to return to work. But I really want to thank the school district and their safe return to the school. I really want to thank our governor, Gavin Newsom, for having the leadership and foresight to make sure that we allow our kids to return to school. I want to thank our state legislators who are here, Assemblymember Ramos, Assemblymember Reyes, who put together a budget, approved a budget that's going to give us the funding we need to have a safe return to school. And it takes partnerships. It really takes partnerships at all levels, not only from the governor and the state legislature, the county offices who provide mental health, and also locally our school district who has the leadership to partner with our counties and our state. It's going to take a great effort to return to school, but most of all, this has been great. And they talked about social and emotional learning, some of the things to talk about that the kids are going to get: relationship skills. They're now going to socialize. They're going to socialize with their friends. Social awareness. They're going to start to learn who they are. This year has been tough. And I can speak from personal experience as a school teacher. I taught in a distance learning classroom. I know the struggles these kids have. Many drop out, many have challenges, but they're back. They're back because the leadership of our state government. Give it up for our state officials doing a great job. Thank you, Governor Newsom. So on behalf of the 5th District, I'm excited and excited for these kids. And I can speak from personal experience. I have a daughter attending the school district. But Governor Newsom, thank you for your leadership, and state legislatures, Assemblymember Ramos and Eloise for your leadership. And next, it gives me great pleasure to introduce my good friend and a champion for mental health, the Assembly member for the 40th District. Let's give it up for James Ramos.
Well, thank you, Supervisor Baca, and I want to thank you here, as well as Superintendent Thurman for being here, State Superintendent, and the Governor, Gavin Newsom. This year, historically, $123 billion has been put into education throughout the state. And prior to that, AB 2112 established the Office of Suicide Prevention in the state of California for the first time in the history of the state, showing that the resources for mental health is needed throughout the state and throughout different areas in the state itself. Here in the San Bernardino City Unified School District, money has been allocated through the budget to work and to provide resources for our students that are returning back to school now. Let's make sure that those resources are available to them, because we know that mental health is something that we all start to struggle with in our lives, no matter what age you are. If you're 40, 50, 60, but let's remember our youth in our communities, our youth that we're asking to come back to school now in a safe environment. Let's make sure that we're preparing them to be successful, that the mental health resources are there. The Governor, Gavin Newsom, has put forward resources to make sure that those resources are available to our students and our youth throughout the state of California and here in the city of San Bernardino and the youth that are here, as well as our Superintendent of Instruction, Tony Thurman, has made it an endeavor for him to focus on mental health resources. And what happens with the resources that are going to be coming into this district will provide for resources and training for those academics and the teachers in our area to be able to identify things that students are going through that might be a trigger point to start to look at mental health moving forward. These are areas that we want to make sure that we're highlighting. And through the leadership of the state of California, with the Governor, Gavin Newsom, and Superintendent Tony Thurman, these resources are something that's at the forefront now, no longer a second thought, but they're at the forefront of all the issues that we're discussing as we're asking students to come back to school in a safe environment, making sure that our students are safe, making sure that our administration is safe, and making sure that our teachers have a safe environment to teach in. These are things that we're focused on the state legislature and working with the administration and Superintendent Thurman. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce, for the first time from the San Bernardino area, a majority leader representing the state of California, our majority leader for the State Assembly, Alois Gomez-Reyes.
Thank you so much. My colleague, Assemblymember James Ramos, has been one of the greatest leaders in our community here, but now we've got him up in Sacramento, and it's so wonderful to have him there. I want to begin by welcoming our Governor, Gavin Newsom, and our State Superintendent, Tony Thurman, here to the great city of San Bernardino. We're excited to have them here. It's really important not only to have them, but to have all of our teachers, our principal, our superintendents here locally, Ted Alejandre, my colleague, James Ramos, Superintendent Doc Irvin, Supervisor Baca, and so many here today. Most importantly, to see the students, to see them already at the desk, and to have the Governor welcome them as well. Over the past year and a half, we've watched our kids struggle with distance learning and the challenges of life during this pandemic. We saw achievement gaps widen for our students, especially our students of color and those from low-income communities. And we've seen an increase in student mental health issues since the onset of COVID-19. We also know that the digital divide has widened educational inequities for our kids, especially those who live in areas with limited internet access, including here in my own district. The inequities were here before, and when we say we want to get back to normal, normal was not good. We want to get back to something better. And that's why it's important to have the investments that have been talked about just earlier. As we look ahead to the fall semester, we have the opportunity to rebuild and reimagine our public education system, to uplift the most vulnerable of our communities. I want to again thank the Governor and his team for the work on the California Comeback Plan. This includes the highest level of education funding we have seen in California's history, over $123 billion. Also, the budget launches the nation's first universal school meals program, which will provide every student with a free breakfast and a free lunch. And also, it will be phasing in the universal transitional kindergarten for all 4-year-olds through transitioning through 2025. The budget makes major investments in community schools, special education, services for youth struggling with homelessness, and broadband access for underserved communities. Finally, I want to thank the governor for his attention to expanding access to financial aid by ensuring all high school seniors complete a FAFSA or a California DREAM Act application. It's an issue that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm so glad that it was included in our trailer bill language. As we recover from the pandemic, we have an opportunity to create a more inclusive, more equitable public education system for our children. And with the governor there, I know that we're going to accomplish this, not only for our students, but for our parents, our teachers, and for the community ahead. Now, I've been asked to say a few words in Spanish, if you will please bear with me. Buenos días a todos. Quiero comenzar dándole la bienvenida al gobernador Gavin Newsom y también al superintendente de escolar, Tony Thurmond, la bienvenida aquí a San Bernardino. También quiero agradecer al asambleísta Ramos, al superintendente Irvin y al supervisor Baca por estar aquí hoy y por todo su trabajo para recibir y reabrir este nuevo año para los estudiantes. Durante el último año y medio hemos visto a nuestros niños luchar con distance learning, la educación de distancia, al aprendimiento en casa, y hemos visto los desafíos de la vida durante la pandemia. Vimos que las brochas de rendimiento se ampliaron para nuestros estudiantes de color y nuestras comunidades de bajos ingresos, y hemos visto un aumento en el problema de salud mental de los estudiantes desde el inicio del COVID-19. También sabemos que la brecha digital ha aumentado la desigualdad educativa para nuestros niños que viven en áreas con acceso limitado al Internet, inclusive aquí en nuestra comunidad. Al mirar hacia el semestre que viene, tenemos la oportunidad de reconstruir y reimaginar nuestro sistema de educación público para mejorar nuestras comunidades más vulnerables. Quiero agradecer al gobernador y a su equipo por su trabajo en el plan de regreso, Comeback, de California, que incluye el nivel más alto de financiamiento para la educación en la historia de California, con más de $123 millones para nuestros estudiantes. También quiero agradecerle el programa de comidas escolares universales, la primera en la nación, que provee la comida para nuestros estudiantes, del desayuno y del almuerzo para todos los estudiantes. Algo muy importante. También el programa de kindergarten, transición universal para todos nuestros niños de 4 años de edad. Ahorita estamos muy agradecidos con el gobernador, con el superintendente, y de esa manera quiero ahora darle la bienvenida a nuestro superintendente. And now it's my great honor to introduce to you my dear friend. I met him when he was an assembly member. He is now the Superintendent of Education here in the state of California, my friend Tony Thurmond.
Thank you to the Majority Leader. It is an honor to be joining the Governor and our various colleagues here today to talk about what is probably the #1 question on everyone's mind, not just in California, but in America. Can we open our schools? And the answer should be obvious, because you got to see it here today at Jones Elementary School. A round of applause for all the educators and staff and administration at Jones. Thank you for your incredible leadership, and to Superintendent Irvin, who is here as well. This is an important day. As you've heard from many who've spoken already, the mental health and supports that are being provided are so critical. Let's face it, we have just come out of what has got to be the most difficult experience that most of us are going to experience in our lifetime. And it is, in fact, traumatic. We've lost loved ones. Everything we know has been disrupted in some way, including what happens in our schools and in our classrooms. And so as we deal with the trauma that that creates, it is so important to lift up these incredible resources that are provided to support our students and their families as we roar back out of this challenge, if I can borrow from the governor a term that I've heard him use. And I'm grateful to everyone who is here, and I'm grateful to the governor and my colleagues serving in the legislature. You heard from the majority leader and Assembly Member Ramos. The governor and the legislature, we've been grateful to work with them, have provided historic funding that supports every aspect of helping our students to be able to be successful in this moment, of allowing us to build back better, an education system that is better than what we had before, and recognizes that many students need support and recovery as it relates to learning gaps, but that one of the most important things we can focus on is social emotional learning and mental health and the kind of supports that we can provide to our students and their families. You know, I'll just speak from the perspective of parent and as someone who's a social worker and who spent 20 years working in our schools, including, 5 years in school-based mental health. These resources that you're hearing about today are critical. And just so that you know, to put it in context, billions, literally billions, being put together to support community schools that will have all the wraparound supports that are needed. $3 billion for supporting mental health for young people from birth through age 25, guided by the governor. And I'm just grateful that the legislature and the governor supported a proposal that our office sponsored to utilize more Medi-Cal dollars to provide more mental health. This is something that I've had a chance to work on for many years, and I'm grateful for the work that's here. I also want to acknowledge our county superintendent, Ted Alejandre, who is an amazing leader. When the pandemic began, he was the president of the association of all of our county superintendents. We all went into this with no playbook or no idea of what we were dealing with. And Superintendent Alejandre steered that ship amongst all of the 58 county superintendents, and in turn supporting 1,000 school districts all across the state. It's always an honor to work closely with you, Superintendent. Of course, our county supervisor, Baca, for your work, and to our school board president, Gwendolyn Dowdy Rogers. We're grateful for your leadership. I have the pleasure of introducing the governor, and there are many things that I can tell you about him. I want to tell you this that you may not know. I've had the honor of knowing him for more than 20 years. When you hear him talk about young people and families, this isn't anything new. He was really trying to architect programs, even back to his days on the Board of Supervisors and mayor, that were all about supporting young people. When I first met him, it was all about focusing on how do we provide key resources to support young people, mentors, healthcare, career training. All of this is part of the message that has been part of his body of work the entire time that he has been elected. And it is amazing that in this moment where we see the greatest financial investment in education that we will probably ever see, that he has helped to steer that along with these incredible legislators who are here today. It's an honor to work with him. He's out there every single day getting our state open again, small businesses, supporting our communities, and of course, supporting our schools. Please welcome our 40th governor, Gavin Newsom.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here with all the kids back in school. Obviously, I'm proud to be here with all the elected officials and remarkable leaders. But there's nothing that lights you up more than seeing young children, particularly children that said their favorite part about being back in school is all the new homework they're getting. They actually were serious about that. And their favorite subjects being math and science and reading. And this is a scene that's now being replicated all throughout the state of California. This was a big week in public education, first big district to open this week. Stockton opened as well. You'll start to see LA Unified and others open over the course of the next few weeks. We're getting all our kids safely back into in-person instruction, and we're doing it in a sustainable way. We don't want to do it in an episodic way. We want to do it in a safe way where these kids can get that full support. When we talk about social emotional learning, that has no substitute. You can't get that respectfully on Zoom school. Every one of these kids raised their hand when we asked what they preferred, be back in the classroom or be back online. Not one child raised their hand. And then they went on to express emotionally, these young kids, without the language, expressing the stress and anxiety that they had last year and the difficulty they had paying attention and learning, and how they felt that they themselves fell short, not recognizing that we all did in the context of not being able to meet their needs because of this pandemic. And so we're here sober and humbled by the enormity of the challenge in front of us to make up for that and to not allow our kids to be left behind. And that's why I'm incredibly proud that behind me are the leaders that have afforded us an unprecedented opportunity, not just to rhetorically identify a problem or even assert our values, but to actually demonstrate them with unprecedented investments. You heard Assemblyman Ramos and Reyes mention the 123. It's $123.9 billion public education budget. That's just, I have to put that in perspective. It's tens of billions of dollars more than any previous budget. This is not marginally better. This is a transformational budget. Now, I know we're prone to hyperbole in politics. It is not hyperbolic to say this is a transformational budget. You heard the Assemblywoman talk about a brand new grade. We have committed to a brand new grade, TK, for all Californians here in the state of California. And there's 2.7 billion reasons that that's not just a promise. We're going to deliver on it. After School for All and full summer immersion, we've been talking about that for decades in the state of California. Quite literally, 3-4 administrations prior have been talking about the importance of after School for All and summer school for all. This year, we fully funded it. $5 billion commitment to get that fully done by 2025. $5 billion just for that proposal. We believe that we can do more and do better when we have more resources in the classroom. We met 2 remarkable counselors in 2 classrooms we just visited. We are investing over $1.1 billion specifically to provide more supports and enrichment by providing more resources so we can get more counselors and staff in the schools to help support our teachers. That's a big deal. We've been talking about that. We talk about it every year. We're actually delivering on that. Special ed, I'm deeply committed to that. My mom worked for Aid to Adoption of Special Kids. Been a big cause of my life, special education. $1.5 billion this year to supplement our efforts on special education. Do you know that every child, this has gotten no attention yet. I was always mesmerized, and forgive me for the editorial, what does get attention, but what actually deserves attention. Do you know that every single child in the state of California that meets the criteria, which is about 3.5 million kids, are going to get a college savings account? This has never been done anywhere else in this country. Every single child. These kids are going to have something that many of their parents, over half their parents don't have, a checking account or a savings account in their name. And depending on their needs, upwards of $1,500 will be seated in that account to create a college-going mindset from the beginning, to create a framework of financial literacy from the beginning. $2 billion we're investing in that program. That's a big deal. The problem with this budget is there's so much in it that it's difficult to unpack it. And as a consequence, not everybody fully understands or appreciates. That includes the $4 billion for communities, well, not community schools, the $4.3 billion that was referenced twice by the superintendent for behavioral health. Not $4.3 billion. Everyone 0 to 25 to get screened and to get service and support for their behavioral health needs. We've never done anything like this in California's history across the board. We talk a lot about that, but we're doing it at scale. $3 billion for community schools, high-dose tutoring, comprehensive full-service community schools. Go on and on. Really proud of this budget. Proud of the remarkable leadership in the Assembly, remarkable leadership in our state Senate. This is a full-throated commitment to transform public education in the state of California. It's a full-throated acknowledgement that we have to do more and do better. It's a full-throated acknowledgement of the stress and the anxiety that the superintendent referenced that so many of you, all of you, have gone through, particularly parents in the last year, year and a half. And so this is a, forgive me, a proud moment to see these kids back in school, to see this scene replicated all throughout the state of California, to be here with these remarkable leaders, Doc, the superintendent, others, principal, that have just done a remarkable job raising people's spirits and expectations and holding us in Sacramento a higher level of accountability. And so we're here in that spirit, in that light of optimism, but recognition that we still have a lot of work to do to make up for the challenges that these kids experienced last year and to work through, final words, this Delta variant. Now, we've been previewing this for many, many months. We were managing and monitoring over 12 different mutations of this virus over the course of the last 9 months to a year. The West Coast virus, of which there were 2 variants, was the dominant variant here in the state of California. That's no longer the case. Not to some of the rest of the country, the Delta variant. And while it's true that California has administered more doses of vaccine than any other state in the nation, over 45 million, about 18 million more than the next highest state, we still haven't gotten enough people vaccinated. We are top 10 in the United States in adults and those eligible being vaccinated. 76.7% of all eligible Californians, I'll repeat that, 76.7% of all eligible Californians have received at least 1 dose, but it's not enough. So we can end this pandemic. We could put this behind us in a month. It's a choice at the end of the day. Invariably, you're going to ask me about mask mandates. If we get everyone vaccinated, that'll be the last time you have to ask that question. We could take these masks off once and for all. Those that are unvaccinated need to get vaccinated. That way we can keep our kids without any stress or anxiety back in person throughout the school year. We can keep our businesses open without any stress or anxiety throughout the recovery period. We have that capacity. And so we are going to continue to do more in that space. We announced some efforts yesterday. Today we'll be announcing more efforts for our Medi-Cal population, as the superintendent reminded me in his reference to the work he's done in that space. And we'll continue to take a leadership position in contrast, respectively, to many states. And I just want to end on that point. This mask mandate, we were one of the first states for our public school system to put that in place. This was before the CDC came out with their recommendation. And it was before the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with that recommendation. But nonetheless, they did come out with those recommendations, and it's the right recommendation. And I'm confident the path we're on, and I hope other states and certainly hope all districts follow the example here in San Bernardino City, where they have embraced that mandate, and you see that in the faces of every kid. With all their remarkable resilience. I got 4. Oldest is 11, youngest is 5. I know a thing or two about their resilience. One of my kids, I can't get the mask off, even when he's in bed and we're reading to him. They want to feel safe. Their parents want them to feel safe, and we want them educated. And so we're here again on the first week of school, supported and supportive of the remarkable leadership that we see here in this district and its 72 remarkable schools. It's wonderful to be here. And of course, now we're happy to take any questions, any of us, but again, with deep recognition and reverence for all the paraprofessionals and teachers that made all this possible. Any questions?
Hi, Governor. Kimberly Chang with KTLE News. To follow up on the mask mandate in schools, the OC Board of Education voted to file a lawsuit. They called it a burden and referred to the emergency order mandate as a violation of constitutional law. Your response, Governor?
We want to keep our kids safe. We want them back in person for in-person instruction. We don't want our kids back on Zoom school. We don't want our kids back online with all the disparities that were self-evident in another classroom I was in when I asked them how their download speeds are. And the fact that a young child in first grade is talking about download speeds suggests everything you need to know about the nature of the impact of this pandemic and how disproportionate it's been. We have in our education code this requirement, and we expect districts, as we always have, to abide by what's in the education code across the spectrum. And we will hold firm in terms of those recommendations that are aligned with the CDC and aligned with the American Academy of Pediatrics, which I'm more interested in their counsel and advice than respectfully those that are seeking to move in the direction of Florida and other states.
Good afternoon, Governor. Christina Gonzalez, Fox 11. Two quick questions. I know universal pre-K is huge for you, and I can see you beaming about it. Maybe perhaps before 2025. But with that in mind, I mean, and with children still not getting vaccinated, do you see as a possibility in our future a mandate to get, for example, the adults working with kids vaccinated, or in some other cases?
Look, we're confident in the approach that the districts have taken. We put $4.6 billion up, the Assembly members and legislature, to focus on improving ventilation, to improving the access to PPE and other sanitation investments, masking, the testing, the contact tracing components, the partnerships with the counties, improving our relationship to our own state-run Valencia Labs testing facility, and to provide an abundance of resource with the flexibility to get our kids safely back in school. At the end of last school year, we were successful in that effort. I'm confident we'll be successful into this school year, and that's where we are today. As it relates to broader mandates, you saw what we did 48 hours ago. State of California is the first state to require all healthcare settings to require not just verification of vaccination, but to require vaccinations by September 30th. We're not shy about leaning in to that space because of the importance of getting this disease behind us. But as it relates to schools, we're confident in the approach we're taking at the moment.
And one quick second question, did you get to watch the debate, and did you have any thoughts about it? Anybody that you think you'll end up debating one-on-one at some point? Anything you want to share with us?
Well, I'm running to defeat the recall. They're running in a different race, and we're going to defeat this recall.
Hello, Governor. My name is Leticia Juarez, proud San Bernardino native, and I'm also with ABC 7. My question relates to the Riverside County Unified School District, with last night their board voting to send to you a resolution that one size fits all does not work, and they want to know what they can do to maybe individualize the different COVID mandates for their school district. That's my first question. I do have a second one.
Well, I don't have the benefit of their resolution, so it's difficult to respond to something I haven't been privy to. As it relates to one size fits all, that's not our approach, quite the contrary. So it's unfortunate they may have a misunderstanding. The superintendent can speak to this much more eloquently than I, but we've created a remarkable amount of flexibility in terms of the utilization of an unprecedented amount of resources the state is providing as it relates to addressing the issue of public health in our schools. As it relates to masking, we just believe that's the appropriate strategy. But as it relates to strategies in terms of public safety and health within the schools themselves, we are not prescriptive whatsoever. And we provided toolkit, technical assistance. We provided a doctor, world-renowned doctor, who's an expert in pediatrics, to help with technical assistance. We have a Safe Schools team that goes out on site to provide best practices and other supports. So I'll take a look at the resolution. I'll consider the merits of their claims, but I want folks to know that we are providing flexibility and historic support.
And then my second question relates to mental health issues. You spoke about the obvious investment in children ages 0 to 25. I got an email yesterday from a mother who lost her 21-year-old son to heat exhaustion after he was released from a jail. She doesn't blame the jail for releasing him. She blames the system and lack of resources as a mother, as a parent of an adult child, and her inability to get him the help he desperately needed because he's 18, over 18, and she can't do anything to really force him to get the help he needed. What can the state do in terms of enacting laws or changing the laws when it comes to adult children with mental health issues?
Well, significant what we did this year in terms of unprecedented supports, $4.3 billion. I really do want to reinforce that because it is the most substantive answer that I can provide to that question. I can't make up for the last 20, 30 years, 40 or 50 years. His predecessor of mine by the name of Ronald Reagan, who in 1967 began the process of dismantling, infamously in his first state budget, the behavioral health system here in the state of California. The investments we're putting this year are unprecedented in U.S. history and in California history. And by the way, they include not just the $4.3 billion 0 to 25 for the screening and supports for adolescents up to the age of 25, but also unprecedented investment in housing, $3 billion, 2.8 to be exact, that we announced yesterday in Long Beach. I would guide you and direct you, and my staff's going to provide you a detailed response to the question. Perhaps we can provide it to the mother and express condolences, obviously, to the tragedy that she's enduring. But we laid out yesterday a behavioral health plan for the state, detailed. Issues of 5150s, issues around Laura's Law, issues around conservatorships, issues around Laura's Law placements, in addition to the $2.8 billion in housing to provide those placements. So we have done a lot, and we have done a lot more than not critics have suggested, even supporters are aware of, including making Laura's Law, which is very meaningful, an opt-out in counties as opposed to an opt-in, which has significantly ramped up its resource as a tool in the toolkit to help people get the kind of treatment they need, particularly those in acute crisis. So comprehensively, we're hitting this head on, but we have a lot of work to do to make up for decades of neglect in this space.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Governor Ted Jen from CanBC. It's taken a year and a half to get to this point to fully reopen schools. To what extent do you believe that wait contributed to support for the recall? And what would you want to say to parents who felt it was too long and who feel that the mental health costs to these kids outweighed the safety benefits?
Well, I was very aggressive in December of last year. We put out a detailed plan to the legislature. My desire last December, we were very clear, was to get our kids back in person full-time for instruction. We were not shy about that. We had a lot of folks that had different opinions. We've got 1,050 school districts in the state, independently elected school boards, district superintendents and others, and we battled on that front. And we were able to work with the legislature and open a substantial number of schools in the school year. And we were able to do that with the support of an unprecedented amount of supplemental resource that we put into that place. We also extended the school year, and I think this is important. And I believe, and Ben's behind you, Ben, forgive me, everyone wondering who the heck Ben is, but we all know him well in the education sector. I think it was 88% of our schools provided comprehensive summer services this year. That was very important, and I hope folks understand that this state supported that effort in order to extend that school year in a meaningful way and to make up for a little bit of that. You'll have to talk to pundits. You'll have to opine more objectively about this recall. But I want to just remind you that the principal proponent of the recall, which, by the way, doesn't reference what you just referenced, it referenced immigration as its number one grievance. The principal proponent of the recall wants to microchip all immigrants. And it's not me taking a cheap shot. That's his stated position. He's the one you see on TV. He's the one that's the principal backer of this recall. You had none other than Rudy Giuliani add his voice to this recall, supporting a candidate, Rudy Giuliani, who believes the minimum wage should be 0, who believes that women do not have the right to choose and wants to overturn Roe v. Wade, who believes we need more offshore oil drilling and fracking in the state of California, who believes not only in Trump, but Trumpism, and thinks Trump has been unfairly burdened with responsibility for the occurrences on January 6th. That's just one of many principal proponents of this recall. I hope people pay real attention to why Newt Gingrich is behind it, why Mike Huckabee is behind it, why the Republican National Committee is behind it. Take a look at the position on public health of these candidates. They don't believe in climate science. They believe it's a hoax. And they don't believe in the science of public health. They would turn back all of the progress the state's made. We've had better health outcomes in Florida and Texas and better economic outcomes in Florida and Texas. They will take us off a COVID cliff. That's what's on the ballot, September 14th.
Hi, Governor. Ryan Hagan with the Southern California News Group. I was just hoping that you could talk about why you chose to come here specifically and whether there was anything you saw that might have surprised you.
Because Assembly members Reyes and Ramos demanded nothing less than me coming back to their districts. And they happen to be, and politicians says this, actually, they're not just colleagues, but they're friends. I have great admiration for both of them and their leadership. And I've had the privilege of being with them on numerous occasions down here on issues of homelessness, mental health, and housing issues, and it's wonderful to be back here. But I thought this important, in addition, because this is one of the largest school districts in California. It's one of the most diverse districts in our state. Remarkable people in this community, this entire region. And I'll say this with respect, I would argue this part of the state is under-recognized in terms of its potential and influence. And I think it's important to highlight the potential and the remarkable influence that these leaders have on the lives of these kids, which will determine our fate and our future. And so it's a real honor to be here in this remarkable school district.
Good afternoon. Aldon Thomas Stiles, California Black Media. This is the last question. For many parents...
Are you cutting everybody else off?
It's just
No,
me
I
here now.
appreciate it.
For many parents, ensuring that their children get the best out of their educational experience isn't an expensive venture, especially during a pandemic and in low-income neighborhoods, especially communities of color. There are not only disparities in healthcare access, but also quality of education. Yeah. What specifically does this plan offer in the way of helping these families offset some of their COVID-19 related financial hardships this academic year, and in addressing long-standing educational inequity in communities of color?
Well, it's a deeper question that moves even well beyond the issue and the parameters and the silos of the public education system. And of course, a big part of our community schools strategy is to integrate and to reimagine a whole person care framework as it relates to not only quality public education, but to address the health needs as well as the nutrition needs of our public kids. By the way, $650 million went into this unprecedented first-in-the-nation effort to provide free, nutritious meals for our kids, breakfast and lunch. This is unprecedented in the U.S. Now, as it relates to your question, Supervisor Baca would be upset with me if I didn't remind everybody of all the supports that we're providing the families of these kids. That support still remains. The number of people that have the opportunity to have their entire rent, debt, to be taken care of going back to April of last year and through September 30th of this year. We will pay 100% of your rent if you've been directly impacted by COVID. To have all of your utility bills be paid. To have your water bill, your electric bill, to pay 100% of that going back to last April and through September 30th. While the state has distributed $243 million in our first round of funding, we have billions of dollars remaining to provide people to get 100% of that rent burden and that utility burden taken care of. That's a meaningful thing to help these families, particularly those that disproportionately have been impacted. And we know the two communities have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, African American and Latino communities. This state has provided unprecedented $12 billion tax rebate, the largest in U.S. history. No state has ever provided $12 billion tax rebates. That's 3/4 of all tax filers. Many of them will be the beneficiary of an additional supplement on the rebate that have children and dependents, additional $500 on top of the $600 rebate. That also is very impactful and meaningful, and overwhelmingly disproportionately will benefit the Latino and African American communities in the state. As it relates to our suite of supports, COVID, pre, post COVID, as it relates to addressing the vagaries of this Delta variant, we continue to disproportionately focus on partnerships with community-based organizations in the African American community and the Latino community to do more to get more people vaccinated and address the concerns and anxieties that persist in terms of that vaccine hesitancy. And that's profoundly important, the health of our diverse communities. And I want folks to know that we have doubled down 480 community-based organizations working with barbershops, faith-based communities, black press, ethnic media across the spectrum to provide additional outreach. We have done, by the way, and I'll close on this, I know this is long-winded and there's not a soundbite any of you can edit. We have knocked on 1.6 million doors. We don't shy away from that. And we have called 1.3 million households. It's called GOTV, Get Out the Vax. Well, another version of GOTV, September 14th. And it's been incredibly effective. We are investing exactly $127.7 million in partnerships. And today, you'll be hopefully writing, I was going to say reading, you're the press, about a new effort for Medi-Cal, which disproportionately, it's 14 million Californians disproportionately representing the diverse populations of the state, a new Medi-Cal effort, $300 million commitment to address incentives and other strategies to get trusted messengers, to get our black and brown communities vaccinated and supported, also to get them enrolled in our expanded suite of services that we offered this year in terms of Medi-Cal. Forgive me, I'm always long-winded, but I can even more so when it comes to this year's historic budget. And I'll just close by saying this. I want to thank 40 million Californians. Because of all of you and your resiliency, we're where we are today. You know, $80+ billion operating surplus this year. I know we advertised it at 76, but there's another 3.9 billion of additional cash that came in. $80 billion operating surplus. Largest tax rebate in American history. Unprecedented investments in affordable housing, workforce housing, homelessness, mental health, and yes, $123.9 billion public education. That's because of all of you, the hardworking taxpayers and members of our remarkable community here in California. The fastest growing economy of any economy in any Western democracy. That's the state of California, outperforming Germany, Japan, the United States as a whole. The state is roaring back, but we can't roar back without being inclusive, focusing on equity, and leaving no one behind. And if there's anything that defines this moment and why I'm here and why this is so important, all the people behind me are so important, it's because when it comes to equity, we can't do it without each and every one of them. And so I'm here in that light and spirit, and grateful to all of you for the opportunity to catch up. Thank you all.